In life, we all take a hard fall. That's part of human nature, is to test your boundaries and get complacent. And that means all of us, no matter your skill level, your luck, you will inevitably push your luck, get complacent, get careless, and make a mistake and take a fall. That's what happened to us last night while trying to take care of a woman who came into our hospital. We got a little complacent with the game. We've been talking about for the first two cases how the game was easy, and we let this 17-year-old girl leave our office at 6 a.m. without fully diagnosing her problem. It was a painful end to a very good case. And I hope we're all a bit chastised for it, for taking the game not seriously enough. And I think you could make the case that, as some people have in the Discord, that maybe the game should have given us a little more hint about what was going on. But I think we learned a valuable lesson that this game takes seriously the role of a doctor in a hospital, and sometimes you should be doing tests even if you have no evidence for it, if it's a high enough risk. And that's what we encountered yesterday, a case that was high enough risk that we should have been checking all possibilities. So thank you for joining me here on Co-op for Two. It's March 24th, 2024 at around 11 p.m. Today we're playing the final case in the box. The hardest case in the box, harder than yesterday's case. And I'm hoping we can take our lessons from yesterday's case and put them into action with today's case and take it seriously. I mean, we took most of yesterday's case seriously, but we got careless in the end, and it hurt to be wrong in that case. So we're all going to work together here to make sure that today's case, let's at least do our job. If we can't guarantee success, we can at least guarantee that we put in a good effort. Let's check in with the chat here. Lots of jokes about insurance costs. Is the hospital in network, insurance codes, lawsuits? Okay, anything else we need to talk about before we get started here? Tomorrow at 3 p.m. we will be playing our Dear Holmes play-by-mail case. Still lots of chat going on about that in the Discord theories. We have one more letter of clues to read. I'm not sure how we're going to do it. I don't know if we should spend a bunch of time before we read the next letter or read the next letter and then discuss it. But I think we'll be spending some significant amount of time tomorrow talking about the case. Talking about theories of the case. And then I think we'll be playing a couple games this coming week, possibly even something tomorrow. I hope everyone who's been playing Medical Mysteries with me the last couple days could make it today. I didn't give you too much notice, but hopefully enough for you to make it. And I talked yesterday about the fact that there's a new box from this company, Medical Mysteries, called Flatline Miami, or Miami Flatline, coming out this year. So we'll be sure to play that soon. Anything else to talk about before we get started here? I guess I want to remind you that in 1 week, next Sunday, I will be doing my live Q&A channel update, except this time it'll be the 3-year anniversary of the channel update, so a little bit special. And I hope you can join me for that. I'll be making a pitch for people supporting the channel through Patreon if they can, to help purchase games. But I'm happy. I'm excited to talk about it. I have some ideas. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have ahead of time. If you want to submit questions ahead of time, you can do so on the Board Game Geek Guild for this channel. There's a link to that on the YouTube About page, or on the YouTube Community tab. You can post a question or something. Anything else? A reminder that this game is quite affordable. I'm trying to remember, was it as much as $35? Somewhere in the $25 to $35 range at Target, which means if it's at the high end of that, it'll be on sale sooner or later. I suspect this game will get some real attention, and it deserves it. But you can only play through these once. So if you think you might want to play through this with your own family, you shouldn't watch this video. You should go out, purchase the game, play it yourself, and you can come back and watch the video afterwards and see how you did. I suspect that there'll be some people watching the playthroughs, especially of Patient 3, maybe that got it right or got it wrong, and it would be interesting to see how you attacked it differently than we did. All right. Let's see what we've got. We've got our generic, I guess we can open this up. We've got our research guides, 5 of them, our code booklet, and then the rest is tutorial. So we don't need that. Our reminder of anatomy, we'll keep that handy. Patient 4. Okay. Now, in all of the patients, there's been a small little sheet to write on. And the only thing I guess I would suggest to you, since you'll probably want to be able to pass this on, nothing gets destroyed except there's only one of these sheets for each case. Let me get it out here. Here's what the real one looks like. So we've been writing on the real ones because that's not important, but I did make scans of it. So I think we'll keep one copy of the original unmolested. And this is so that I could pass this along. I do expect to give this to my niece, who's interested in medical school. It seems like a perfect gift. All right, and I know people were upset by yesterday's case. I mean, it did hurt. It was painful to... I'm not even sure what happened to our patient, but I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't played it. But before we read our intake and get started here, let me just check in with the chat. Is there anything that people want to talk about before we get started? Any thoughts, advice, ways we should play this game differently? I think there are legitimate suggestions you could make for making case 3 for, well, we had a very interesting experience with case 3 at the end, and I think there's lots that could be said about it. Maybe I'll review this box soon and talk about some of them. But I think it was mostly fair, and certainly given our complaints that the cases were too easy, we cannot complain about a case being a little hard. But we do have some lessons now to think about. Part of our job is to do tests. Well, one of the suggestions of our, one of the reactions to our playthrough yesterday was that we spent too much time hypothesizing, talking about theories early when we could have just been focusing on tests. And I think you could make that complaint in general about the way I play some of these mystery games on the channel. Well, Sherlock Holmes has a famous quote that I can only paraphrase, and it's basically something like, don't prematurely try to solve things, just collect data. And we don't really follow that here. We spend time discussing theories early because it's more enjoyable, not because it's the most efficient and the best way to solve mysteries. But sometimes you do pay a price. You get locked into a theory and you get blinders on and you can't see alternatives. So you do have to be wary of that. All right, let us read our intake here. Pete Johnson, 52-year-old male. Pete Johnson is a train wreck. He's got bruises on his face and his arm is wrapped in cloth soaked completely through with blood. He's also strapped down to the stretcher and yelling incoherently. The stench of alcohol is impossible to miss. "You've got a live one here," says the paramedic, wheeling him in. "He tried to jump out the back of the ambulance, so we restrained him. He hasn't let us do much. We haven't even been able to dress his wounds." Pete strains against the wrist straps. "Let me go," he demands. Nurse Judy talks soothingly to him to calm him down while you listen to the paramedic. "We got called in after our buddy here got thrown through the bar window in a fight, landed on the sidewalk and didn't get up. But get this. Before the fight, he was telling everyone about how he'd just been in a motorcycle accident. Instead of getting himself checked out at the hospital, he drove to the bar. The owner told me he thought Pete may have already been drinking before he arrived. Well, he's yours now. Good luck with him." As you approach the stretcher, you hear Pete tell Nurse Judy, "I just need Rachel." She says something quietly and he stops struggling, his energy spent. You look him over. There's a lot of blood on his clothing and skin. It's unclear how much the blood has been diluted with other liquids like water or alcohol. You step forward to examine his arm. You realize it's wrapped in what used to be a white bar towel. "Don't touch me," slurs Pete. "I'm all right. I'm okay." Pete's face is pale and distraught. He closes his eyes and mumbles something to himself. Before you release Pete from the stretcher, you call security to be nearby in case there's a problem. But you're fairly confident Pete won't be much trouble. His struggles against the straps were weak, as if he'd worn himself out, and who knows how much blood he's lost. "Pete," you say, "I'm Dr. "Rachel?" he interrupts. "I want to talk to Rachel." Looks like it's going to be a challenging night. Okay, so we've got a drunk guy who's possibly been injured multiple times. Bruises on face, arm wrapped in cloth and bleeding. And then we've got like 3 places where he might have gotten wounded. First, he tried to jump out of the back of the ambulance, but I guess he didn't successfully jump out. So I guess maybe he wasn't wounded there. But he was pushed out, thrown through the bar window in a fight, and didn't get up. That's the most recent damage, physical damage to him. But then before that, he claims he was in a motorcycle accident and drove to the bar. So he seems like he's probably an alcoholic, but it's not 100% clear. But 2 scenes of accident. One with his motorcycle accident and the other one getting thrown through the bar window. He wants someone named Rachel. So maybe if we could sober him up, we could find out who Rachel is and talk to Rachel. And that might help him and help give us information, because it's going to be hard to get information from him about what happened. Landed on the sidewalk, didn't get up. So we have to be worrying about another head injury. These head injuries are going to be the death of us. They're so dangerous and hard to identify. Okay, lots of blood on his clothing and skin. It's unclear how much blood has been diluted. We want to look at his arm, and it's got a white bar towel. I guess that would suggest that that injury happened when he was pushed out of the bar window rather than from the motorcycle accident. Although I guess if he came in after a motorcycle accident, he might have taken the towel. So I'm not sure how that really helps us. The only thing that jumps out to me is that this would be a case where occasionally someone will come in, whether it's to a police station or whatever, and they'll do a cursory scan and they'll miss something's an injury. So we've got someone who can't tell us the details about where they're injured, or might not even know, or might be so drunk he doesn't even notice it. This might be a case where you'd be like, strap him on the bed and take off his clothes, cut the clothes off so that we can see, especially if we think he was in a motorcycle accident, you'd want to see and look all over his body and make sure there are no visible injuries that you couldn't see while he was dressed. Okay, let's continue. Story card 1 and status card 1. All right, so our first status card is that he's drunk and non-cooperative. So it might be nice to get him cooperative. Maybe if Rachel comes, he would be. Okay. Let's read what the story card says. These are going to be interview questions we can ask him about. What happened to you? How much did you drink? Did you take anything else? Where do you hurt? And tell me about Rachel. I mean, these are interesting because mechanically, these don't change based on his status. Otherwise, I might be inclined to say, well, don't try to ask him questions until we can sober him up a little bit. But that doesn't change this card. So presumably he's going to have the same answers to these no matter what. He wants to talk about Rachel, so he might answer this question. We might be able to get Rachel here to help talk to him. It's the normal thing, 1 action for 2 questions. Okay, let's take a look at his... let me make sure I put this back in so we don't read this epilogue by mistake. Okay, let's take a look at his vitals. Heart rate looks normal. Temperature looks normal. Blood pressure, I guess, normal. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe even a little low. Respiratory and oxygen look okay. 52 years old, 5'9", 165. He's a stockbroker. Interesting. Face cuts and bruises. Altered cognition, slurred words. Probably just because he's drunk, but you could also get that from a hit on the head and it would be hidden by the being drunk. Left forearm is what's lacerated. Cut. We don't know about illnesses, travel, medications. Somehow we've picked up that he's allergic to latex. Allergic to latex. Okay, I'm not sure what tests would involve latex, so it doesn't feel like we got to worry about that too much. Medical history. He's got hypertension. He's got high blood pressure, but he's not taking blood pressure medications. I guess we found his records in the hospital. Hasn't been back for 3 years. Family history unknown. He was adopted under a closed adoption. In other words, you don't know who his birth mother is. I guess that means it's hard to know his family history. Divorced with 3 children who live with the mother. So that could very well be Rachel. During a prior visit, he stated he smokes 5 to 10 cigarettes weekly, drinks 2 to 3 drinks on weekends, previously referred to stress management program. So he doesn't claim to be an alcoholic, 5 to 10 cigarettes, not a heavy smoker, but these are just his claims. You might imagine he would be lying about that if he was having some custody dispute he might not want to let on. Let's see. Cuts and bruises brought in by paramedics because of large laceration on his left arm. You might imagine he got that while being pushed out of the glass window. Agitated, non-cooperative. Pale appearance of facial skin, redness on nose. Could just be from drinking. Altered cognition, slurring words. Non-cooperative, non-cooperative, non-cooperative. So basically, we can't get good information from him. He's not answering our questions. Laceration on left forearm. All right, that sounds like just something that needs treatment. Paramedic. Witnesses say he has a long laceration on his left arm that he got during the bar fight. The bar owner wrapped the laceration with the bar towel. Patient would not let us touch his arm. However, the bleeding appears to be under control. He may have lost a lot of blood at the scene. Police officer says, we questioned the bartender and other witnesses. They said that he appeared intoxicated when he arrived, had 2 more drinks before someone provoked him by accusing him of crashing his bike into their motorcycle parked in front of the bar. A fight ensued. The scene was chaotic with broken glass everywhere. So maybe this motorcycle was right in front of the bar, this accident, and was trivial. Patient won't let us touch his arm. However, bleeding appears to be under control at the moment. This is an interesting case. Let's just talk about some initial thoughts. I mean, one thing that comes to mind is, are we going to have to sedate him so that we can treat him? If he's not going to let us treat his arm and sew it up without being sedated. But on the other hand, I'm a little concerned about sedating him when he's so drunk. And if there's a possibility that he's got a head injury when he was pushed out of the bar window. Our big problem with this case, the symptoms don't seem that severe. The problem is that he's uncooperative and not answering questions. Let's take a look at what the chat says. He has a stressful job, which could explain the high blood pressure. Matt says he is strapped down. Yes, it's true. Alcohol in his blood, yeah. I guess one of our early questions might be, is there medication that will sober him up? Let's take a look at our... He's lost blood, so I can see already one of our things is a blood transfusion. I really wonder if our first order of business shouldn't be to give him blood. Let's look at what we've got here. Blood transfusion. Medical treatment in which blood is transferred into a person's circulation intravenously. Various medical conditions to replace lost components of the blood. I mean, that seems like a reasonable thing. I wonder if that would... You know, another thing that we need to think about is these legal items, which we haven't looked at before. carefully. Let's just take a look at what our responsibilities are. He may have just crashed into a bike in front of the bar, but he may have also gotten into some accident where someone was injured and where this is important. So let's see here. Implied consent. Police officer with probable cause that a person was driving while intoxicated can request a chemical test, breath or blood test to determine blood alcohol content. These tests are performed after an original official arrest was made. Refusal can result in civil fines. Any person tending to a patient with gunshot, bullet, knife, sharp object is required to report the injury to law enforcement. The legal limit for DWI in New York is a blood alcohol content of 0.08% or lower. The legal limit's 0.04% or lower for commercial truck drivers. Problem is he's been drinking after his accident, so it's going to be hard for us to say even if we found a high blood alcohol content in his blood now, how does that help us? He could just say, well, I was sober when I walked in. I want to look at other drugs that might sober someone up. I'm not aware of any, but let's see here. Antibiotics, blood thinners, corticosteroid, epinephrine, allergic reactions. Anesthesia, ketamine. Let's look at ketamine used as pain medication, procedural sedation in emergency rooms, popular choice of sedating highly agitated patients, potentially fatal in alcohol intoxicated patients. Okay, so if we need to calm him down, we are absolutely not giving him ketamine. Orazepam for seizures and calming him down, antibiotic. Conscious sedation, such as to calm an anxious patient before a test. Commonly used sedative in emergency rooms. The use of cannabis, alcohol, and grapefruit juice can cause major reactions, including breathing problems. Okay, so no ketamine and no midazolam. So remember, so if he starts freaking out and he's becoming uncooperative and we have to act quickly, we have to make sure not to give him these sedatives. Let's see. Alcohol and morphine can lead to coma or death, so we're not going to give him morphine either. We could give him, if he needed pain medication, naproxen. Not morphine. Okay, so just keep that in mind if we need to sedate him. Wow, okay, not too many choices here. What about this? Combination of hydrocodone and acetaminophen used to relieve pain severe enough to require opioid treatment, or when other pain medicines do not work well enough or can't be tolerated. Can have life-threatening side effects when combined with alcohol. So it's interesting. The fact that he's so drunk makes it very dangerous to give him most of these pain medications and sedatives. But it looks like we probably could get away with naproxen if we needed to deal with pain. Safe to use alongside alcohol. Okay. So our go-to drug if pain treatment is going to be naproxen. Let's keep that in mind. That's important for us. We could give him blood alcohol test, but he's been drinking before the after the accident, so I'm not sure how that helps us. But we could find out if he's been taking other drugs, I suppose. That might be relevant to us, although not for naproxen, it won't. And we could try to give him some x-rays to see what else might be damaged. Or an MRI. Soft tissues. Probably this is what we care about more. Bones, broken bones, right? So maybe x-ray. Let's take a look at what we've got here. So we can interview him. I have some doubts about that. Let's see. Physical exam. X-ray of his chest. CT scan head, abdomen. We could do a drug panel to see what drugs he's on. We could do blood transfusion. Crash cart would be if he's going into cardiac arrest or something, I think. We could look that up. We could dress and suture his arms. We may need to look at that. We haven't done much surgery in this game. Let's just take a look at what we've got here. So dressing a wound is to clean and cover a wound with gauze or cloth to protect it. And then suture, clean a wound and use stitches to close the wound so it can heal. Blood transfusion. Okay. What was the other one? Just a physical exam. I mean, I talked in the beginning about wanting to just check him quickly for other wounds. So I think a physical exam wouldn't be a terrible idea either. Finding out what other drugs he's on is tempting as well. I'm a little worried that he's going to have a heart attack on us. Let's look up laceration. Skin wound where none of the skin is missing, typically caused by a sharp object. Traumatic wounds should be closed, such as with sutures, within 6 hours or 12 hours if the wound has been cleaned or dressed. That's interesting. So we need to treat his arm wound. We could go straight to sutures, or we could dress it for now and then buy us a little more time to suture it. All right, let's go back here. Physical exam, dress or suture. We should do one of these soon. Blood transfusion. See, we don't have, oh, there's our naproxen for pain. If he's in pain, but if he's all drunk, he may not be in much pain. And then acetaminophen would be another pain thing and would also be good for his blood. Let's just look up acetaminophen again, because I don't think we checked that one when we were looking at these. Often recommended as a first-line treatment for mild to moderate pain. Taking or combining with alcohol increases the risk of kidney damage. Okay, so if he's exhibiting pain, it's the naproxen, not the ketamine, not the acetaminophen, not the midazolam. Probably not the Vicodin too, although I don't remember what we read about Vicodin. Hydrocodone, yes, don't combine it. Okay, so all of these are counterindicated with alcohol. But IV fluids would be another option as a general recovery. And then there are the questions again. It seems to me that the first order of business should be a physical exam and dressing the arm. We're told that the arm bleeding is under control. So I don't think we need to go right to sutures. I think that's a more involved process. Let's make sure there's no head injury first or other injuries. So I do think we have to dress it. So I want to do a physical exam. I want to dress that wound. But then the other things that are sort of on my mind are X-rays and CT scans. And then I wonder if we shouldn't do a blood transfusion right away because of the blood loss, but we just don't know how much blood loss there's been. What does the channel think are high priorities here? Let's see. Thoughts about blood transfusion. Perhaps after blood test to see how much blood he's lost. I don't think a blood test is going to tell us how much blood he's lost. In fact, I don't think there's a test for that. Deal with what we know are the immediate issues, bleeding and loss of blood. Then we do a more in-depth physical exam. And Tina says, yes, if you've got blood loss, you have anemia. You can test for that. Let's look up a blood transfusion. We want our procedures here. Let's look up a blood alcohol, heart muscle damage. I'm a little worried he might have had a heart attack, but okay, let's look up blood transfusion. We just give him new blood. Okay, replace lost blood. That's reasonable, and that might help sober him up as well, I believe. And then what did we want to look at? Let's just read that last thing about how his arms are. Okay, he won't be much trouble. He worn himself out. Who knows how much blood he's lost? A lot of blood on his clothing and skin. Well, I feel like a blood transfusion isn't going to do harm. Where was the part about his arm looks not so bad, like it's not our immediate concern? Where was that card? You examine his arm. You realize it's wrapped in what used to be a white bar towel. Don't touch me. I thought we read that his arm wasn't so bad now. He hasn't let us do much. We haven't been able to dress his wounds. Well, I do think we need to dress the wounds fairly quickly. Story card one was our questions. Okay. Let's deal with the immediate thing in front of us. Let's dress the arm and let's do blood transfusion. Here's our thing here. The bleeding appears to be under control. He may have lost a lot of blood at the scene. Bleeding's under control, lost a lot of blood. Okay, that suggests to me that blood transfusion first, since we can't ask him how much blood was lost, and then we'll dress his arm soon to buy us some time. We might go straight to sutures, I wonder. Okay, let's do a blood transfusion, yeah? What's his blood type? We don't know. We don't have information on that, but we never do. But we're just going to give him type O, whatever the universal blood type is. Where's our... Let's look up blood transfusion before we actually do that to make sure there's no counterindication. There are things such as blood types, and you have to be careful not to give someone the wrong blood type, which is why you give them type O, whatever the universal blood type is that's compatible with everyone. But where is our blood transfusion? Here. Medical treatment in which blood is transferred into a person's circulation intravenously. So, no real counterindications. As long as he lets us do it. So let's try it. And if he freaks out and won't let us do it, then we're going to have to deal with another problem. But let's start this going. BEQ. Let's start with that. So first thing we're doing is blood transfusion. BEQ. Let's see if he'll let us do it. Hopefully he will. Story card 13. Okay. Two units of packed red blood cells, RBC, help stabilize the patient. Okay, we stabilized him, but no change of status. He's still drunk and non-cooperative. All right. I think we continue with our plan. Dress his arm. These are the first. We're doing basic stuff on what we can see. These are the two easy ones. We could try to suture up the arm, but I guess my thinking on this is until we rule out more serious stuff, we should be doing stuff that's quick and simple. Bleeding's controlled. We don't need to risk him freaking out about sutures and everything, so we're going to dress the wound. Dress his arm. AJL. AJL. Pete initially pulls away when you touch his arm. Only with Nurse Judy's help are you able to slowly remove the dirty bar towel covering his arm, clean the cut, apply antibiotic cream, and wrap the open wound with gauze. Okay, so I feel like that was consistent with why we chose to dress it and not suture it. Like he might have fought us if we tried to suture it. So these helped, but didn't do anything dramatic. Okay, now we've got one more set of actions we can take before events start triggering. I still don't think... he's going to sober up on his own. Right now, he's not going to answer any questions. So I think we should do a physical exam on him. Our only x-ray option is chest. That's too specific for us. We want them to do the thing you see them doing, where they cut the legs of the pants off and do a full test. Crystalis says he has high blood pressure. I am worried about him having a heart attack at some point here. He has hypertension. He's not taking blood pressure medications, but he is drinking. I feel like that would lower. All right, we're going to do a physical exam. Now that he's been treated for his immediate things, I think we need to see if there's any other physical injury that we've missed. FYF. And then maybe we'll worry about a X-ray or CT scan. Okay, here we go. FYF. Looks like there's some entry here. You ask Pete if you can examine him. He mumbles something you can't understand. You tell Pete you're going to touch him to see if he has any other injuries. As you begin to examine him, he moans, Rachel. As you touch his stomach and then his side, his hands grab your hand. Stop. That hurts. And I'm a married man. I mean, then he starts crying and won't let you continue the exam. So stomach and abdomen, he seemed to say, caused him pain. Stomach and then side, which would be like appendix, maybe. Okay, so let's stomach and side pain. Okay. So now we have to consider, has something happened? Has he got some injury to his stomach and side? Like side is appendix, kidney? He won't let you continue the exam. Let me just see here. You begin to examine him. He moans. He wants Rachel. Okay, it wasn't clear whether we checked his legs or anything. Stomach and side, though, that no longer feels like X-ray. X-ray, you might want to check out, like, chest, broken bones, but stomach doesn't feel like it's X-ray material. But okay, before we do any of that, we need to do the 2 a.m. event. 2 a.m. event is LAG. I'm going to write that in up here, LAG. Let's see what happens at 2 a.m. I'm a little nervous about this guy. LAG, story card 3. Whoa. Pete's calmed down somewhat. Instead of fighting with the hospital staff, he appears severely depressed. I don't know what happened, he says. My life was perfect. I had everything. And then she left me. He begins to cry, holding his left side. I don't feel so good, Doc. His moans turn into racking sobs as his body convulses in agony. You step back just in time as he vomits up a spray of red. He convulses again, bends over, vomits 2 more times, a pool of blood, alcohol, and chunks of a sandwich forming at his feet. Take status card 2, drunk and ailing, and story card 2. Whoa. He's got internal injuries. Probably from accident. Now we've got a serious situation on our hands. Okay, I'm gonna add here that it was left side that's in pain here. Wow, he's coughed up a lot of blood. Good thing we put him on a transfusion. He's in pain. Status card 2, drunk and ailing, and story card 2. Okay, so we've changed from drunk and uncooperative to now drunk and ailing. I'm throwing away our status card 1 and taking story card 2. Oh, look at that. The interview changed. Okay, so this is what we talked about before, about this is the first time that the interview has changed. But remember, that's how we role-played it. We role-played it thinking he's not sober enough to talk to us. So we didn't bother asking him questions. Now he's starting to sober up. However, I feel like these are still not going to work. I feel like he's in too much pain. I almost think we're going to have to give him the naproxone so that he can even talk to us. But we know where he hurts. And I don't think the rest matter. We should also consider the possibility of a suicide, right? Could be appendix, kind of coincidental that he's gotten to this accident, but it could also be suicide. Could be internal injury from a crash, but could be poison from suicide attempt. Okay. And my gut tells me asking him questions is not going to help so much, but we could ask more about Rachel, who he wants to keep talking about. Yeah, I was going to say, could he have tried to cut his wrist with the arm? But no, that's something from the glass. Okay. Wow, that's pretty rough. My life was perfect. I had everything. Then she left me. He's holding his left side. I don't feel so good. You know, we might want to look into poisons and treatment for poisons. He appears severely depressed. Okay. However, before we do, we have to take our first break. Interesting developments. We know it's stomach related, and on the left side, kidneys. Well, the job of kidneys are to process poisons and things. So maybe it's not so surprising that it would be a poison would attack his kidneys. So we might want to focus on tests that would tell us whether he's got poisons or physical damage during a motorcycle accident. So let's take a break. I'll see you in 8 minutes. Okay, we're back. We've got a patient who's still very drunk, who's just vomited up blood in front of us twice, who's depressed, whose wife just left him, who's gotten into a fight, which has lacerated his arm, but we've taken care of that, so I don't think we have to worry about that anymore. But we do have to worry about vomiting blood twice, chunks of a sandwich he's eaten recently. I'm not sure how relevant that is to us. So, stomach and his side, we could be looking at kidney problem, other internal injury to organs, liver. Kidneys are at the back of the body, but he's holding his stomach. That suggests it's not kidneys, I guess. Okay, so could be multiple things going on. Let me tell you what I'm a little bit concerned about. So there's some real interest in the channel in doing a CT scan on his abdomen. I think that absolutely makes some sense. However, let me tell you what I'm concerned about. CT scan, and I wouldn't be surprised if he also has some other broken bones if he's been physically damaged, but CT scan, series of X-ray pictures providing more detail than a conventional X-ray. Usually the first choice, particularly bone fractures. CT scan can detect tumors or lesions, head trauma, but we'll only be doing his abdomen. Some soft tissue conditions such as ulcers may not always be apparent. Contrast dye is used for most abdominal and pelvic CT scans. So I'm a little concerned about the idea of whether he's going to be able to sit through a CT scan. Don't you have to be like, stay still, and while you're on the bed of the machine that sends you through it? Like, I'm afraid that he's doubled up in pain, convulses in agony. So I kind of feel like we're going to have that we need to give him this naproxen. My gut is telling me we need to give him naproxen to make him able to respond. I feel like if we try to do the CT scan without the naproxen, he's going to fight against it. That's kind of what my thing. Let me just look at what this upper endoscopy, that looks like probably his intestines. Let's just look at what that is. Upper endoscopy. That's where a tiny camera on the end of a long, flexible tube is inserted into a patient's mouth to examine, diagnose, and treat conditions that affect the upper digestive system, such as internal bleeding, usually performed under sedation or anesthesia. So we're not just going to try to give that to him. I'm not sure we've seen anything about poisons. I'm not sure we have any tests or any set of things on our things here that have to do with poison. I feel like he may hit some he's got something serious going on that we're gonna be in trouble if we don't figure out what it is soon. Contrast dye. We had one person that was allergic to contrast dye. We don't know, since we're not able to talk to him. We don't really have any treatment for poison if he does have poison. I wonder if it's time to ask him questions before we give him the CT scan. But we don't have anything to test for poisons, although we could do a drug panel, but that's for illegal drugs, I think. We could do some of these tests. They don't really say that they address. The blood tests are very vague about what they find. Problems with fluid volume, dehydration, loss of blood. I see. That would be something that could have told us if he needed a transfusion. Any substance used in the last 7 days. I wish one of these was more clear about whether it would find poisons. Or we could send him straight to a gastroenterologist. How much did you drink? I'm kind of curious to ask him about how much did he drink? Did he take anything else? Sedative and upper endoscopy. Really? Spamonite says, rabbit hole about poison. I vote sedation and upper endoscopy. Really? That sounds very iffy to me to put him under sedation when we can't ask him any questions. Let me read upper endoscopy again. Tiny camera on the end of a long pressable tube is inserted in patient's mouth to visibly examine, diagnose, and sometimes treat conditions that affect the upper digestive system. Upper digestive system. Sedation or anesthesia. That feels like it's upper digestive system. It feels like it would be. I'm not sure that would get to where he's saying the pain is, and I'm wary about putting him under sedation. Although, I guess if he's under sedation, it would be easier to do the other tests on him. Do you think we could just send him for the endoscopy and they'll include sedation, or they're going to make us Uh, there's no ultrasound option. Well, if we talk to the gastroenterologist, he may recommend an endoscopy. I don't know if we have time to send him to the gastroenterologist. I'm warming to the idea of doing an upper endoscopy. I just don't love the idea of having to fully put him under sedation while he's so drunk. That just seems dangerous. But there's no generic anesthesia. Upper digestive system, such as internal bleeding. All right, let's do an endoscopy. But should we talk to the gastroenterologist first to get his advice? Or should we just go right to the endoscopy? I mean, surely it's going to be... All right, camera, upper endoscopy. Let's do it. Yeah, okay, let's do it. Then we can see if there's a... The camera will give us the best shot at it. And we have to trust that they won't put him under sedation that he can't handle. Okay, this is a little nerve-wracking. He's got signs of internal bleeding, so we're going to do an endoscopy. We're going to try to do an endoscopy and see what happens. It wouldn't surprise me if he's uncooperative. Here we go. Story card 39. There we go. Look at that. As I suggested, he won't do it. He says, "You're going to knock me out, right?" And then he's saying if we want to give him midazolam, take card 40. Well, we know we don't want to give him midazolam. Midazolam is one of our contraindicated items for alcohol. Major reactions, including breathing problems. So we're absolutely not giving him midazolam. Now let's see if it'll let us give him something else, or if he's just going to refuse it. So I'm taking 41. He's clearly uncomfortable. As you insert the camera into his mouth, he fusses and can't hold still. He gags again and again. This would have been much easier with sedative. Instead, you start talking to Pete about movies, cars, and other topics, but when you get to baseball, you've got his attention. So you talk sports and are able to distract him until you can complete the endoscopy. Okay. Well, that worked. I'm surprised that he let us get it into his mouth at all. I thought we would need to give him something. Okay, let's see what we got. During the upper endoscopy, you discover Pete has a bleeding gastric ulcer, likely aggravated by his excessive alcohol use. You stop the bleeding with endoscopic hemostasis. Using a heater probe you control through the tube. The procedure is successful. Story card 23. So bleeding ulcer, that could explain the blood and the pain. Okay. There's a wide range of drugs you can give Pete at this time. To complete this action, give Pete as many of these drugs as you like. List each drug after endoscopy on Pete's patient form. If you have status card 2, drunk and ailing, take status card 4, drunk and in pain. Otherwise, take story card 36. How odd. Okay, well, we do have story card 2. So we're going to take instead now story card 4. Now he's in serious pain. Okay. So we've taken care of an ulcer. And now we can decide what drugs to give him. And it's telling us to fill these out now on his form here. A little unusual. All right. Well, he's in pain. That's his status. So we'd like to give him something for his pain. We've already identified that naproxen would be reasonable for pain, but that's not in the list. So we're looking for some drugs for ulcer, I guess. I guess we just go through this list. I'm not sure if there's what other logic there would be. Amoxicillin is an antibiotic. He's got, what does it say about his ulcer? A bleeding gastric ulcer. Okay, do we have information on ulcers? Let's look up ulcers. Ulcer. Peptic ulcers are open sores on the inside lining of the stomach and upper portion of the small intestine. They're commonly caused by an infection of the bacterium Helicobacter pylori. Helicobacter pylori, as well as long-term use of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen and naproxen. Oh, it looks like it's probably good we didn't give him naproxen. It could exacerbate the ulcer. Not caused by stress or spicy foods, but they can make the symptoms worse. Alcohol is a risk factor for developing an ulcer. The most common symptom is stomach pain. Severe cases can include blood in the stool, trouble breathing, vomiting blood, unexplained weight loss. Treat with antibiotics while reducing the amount of acid in the stomach. So probably it's good we didn't give him naproxen. Now let's remember that, because now we don't have anything to give him for pain, unfortunately. Okay, so, but it is antibiotic that we're going to treat with while reducing the amount of acid in the stomach. Okay, so let's continue here. Now we can look at these more closely. Amoxicillin, antibiotic will not work on viral infections, so that would be fine. Ceftriaxone, used to treat many types of bacterial infections. Avoid use if the patient has a penicillin allergy. We don't know that he's got penicillin allergy or not. We don't think he does. We've got all these choices. Another choice is this one here. Fungal infections, no. Ciprofloxacin can cause nausea, stroke. We don't want to give him that one, I guess. We can give him as many of these as we want. Why would we give him multiple? Why wouldn't we just pick one? We give him this. Often used in combination with other medicines to treat duodenal ulcers. Well, this isn't a duodenal ulcer. This is a gastric ulcer. But it is an ulcer. What else we got? We could give him this, an antifungal. No. We could give him... Where's our fluoxetine? Oh, that's the antifungal. Nitrofurantoin. What's that one for? This one's here. Treat certain bacterial and parasitic infections of the reproductive system. No. Okay. First choice for urinary tract. Protein pump inhibitor. Amount of acid the stomach produces. Okay, so there's one. So we want to give him pantoprazole. Pantoprazole for acid in the stomach. Okay. And then worm infection, no. So it looks like we probably just want to give him one of these antibiotics and the acid reducing thing. Which antibiotics do we want to give him? We could give him a penicillin-based one. He's allergic to latex. No known allergic to penicillin. So this seems reasonable, but maybe we could give him the one for ulcers, often used in combination with other medicines to treat duodenal ulcers. Even though that's not the kind of ulcer, don't you think that would be the one to give him? Since we don't have one specifically for his kind of ulcers, unless I've missed it. And Tina says, in real life, you give all three antibiotics. Interesting. Really? List each drug after endoscopy on the patient's form. Okay, so we're just saying this is for all for his endoscopy. All right, well, let's for sure give him this one. Clarithromycin. And I don't want to give him 3 antibiotics. That seems overkill to me. Bacterial and parasitic reproduction. Wait, what did that just say? Gastroenterological tract. Ulcers. That's it. There's our ulcer right there. We almost missed it. There's our ulcer, H. pylori. So we were a little careless. And I'm not sure where we saw that it was H. pylori. It was on one of these ulcer things. Here. Small intestine ulcer, stomach, gastric, upper portion of the small intestine. That's the duodenal, caused by H. pylori somewhere, it says. There. Okay, so there's our main one for it. Metronidazole. This is for the endoscopy stuff. Okay, I think that's good enough. 2 antibiotics and an antacid. And Tina says there are 2 that are metronidazole. I'm not sure what that means. 2 that are here are metronidazole, says the Tina. I don't know what that means. There's only 1 on my list here, so you have to be clear what you're talking about if you're trying to tell me something. Okay, so that's our treatment of that. All right, now we've got this situation on our hands. And we're still down. We've still got plenty of time left. So what else are we worried about? I guess we're still worried about his head. He's going to start feeling better very quickly. We've given him some antacid stuff for his stomach. But we don't want to give him the naproxen anymore because that will aggravate his ulcer. So basically, we can't give him any pain medication. But since he's talking, I think maybe it's time to ask questions. I think I agree with the Spamonite, who says, now he's cooperative, we should ask some questions. I would tend to agree with that. And he's sobered up a little because he's in pain. Okay, so why don't we ask him some questions? What do you think? We could ask him if he's taken anything else. We could ask him what happened to him. I guess that would be a reasonable thing. He's already seems to telling us that he hurts in his stomach. We could ask about Rachel, though she seems to be the ex-wife. That doesn't seem to help much, but maybe if she comes in, she can help. I'm sort of still curious if he took anything else. Ask him for some stock tips, says DJ Moneycut. Okay, why don't we're going to ask him some questions here. This seems like a good time. Let's have a little vote. Tell me which questions you want to ask him. I think it makes sense to ask him question 1. He can give us hopefully a better description. I think we might do a CT scan on him now, too. 1 and 2 says Perry. Dispamonite says spend 2 actions, ask him all of these questions. I guess if he's responsive to the first 2, we could consider asking him all of them. Isara says 1 and 4. All right, let's ask him 1, and then we'll take it from there. If he's not responsive, then maybe we're not going to waste any more time. Okay, what happened to you? TYN. Question 1. T-Y-N. And maybe we should still do a CT scan. TYN is story card 4. Okay, here we go. Looks like he's talkative now. What happened to me? What didn't happen to me? I'm a New York stockbroker. I mean, I was rich too. Then my wife left me and I got laid off. Took the kids, took the house, took all our money. Today I crashed my motorcycle. Wasn't too bad a fall, so I got back on and drove to a bar. Left my bike out front. Some guy said it tipped onto his bike and scratched the paint. Can't remember who threw the first punch, but I remember throwing plenty back before I got knocked out. Then he's grimacing in pain. Came to with the towel wrapped around my arm and some ambulance guys lifting me onto a stretcher. I wish I could call my wife. All right, well, he seems very talkative now, so it seems like he's in pain. He was holding his stomach, but I think we should ask him question 3. I think now that he's talkative, maybe... I mean, he's clearly depressed. He's lost everything. But he's not told us he's tried a suicide attempt. He did get knocked out, though, so I think concussion is a real possibility. I think we got to worry about a head injury from being knocked out. Knocked out. I think we should ask him question 3, because it doesn't sound like there's a suicide attempt. So question 2 is less appealing. And Rachel, that's sort of a wild card, but it feels like he would know better than anyone if he hurt in multiple places. So I'm going to ask him question 3. So 1 and 3. Question 3 is ECT. Maybe he'll say, like, I also have a headache. I also have foot pain. ECT is story card 7. Okay, let's see if he just says stomach or something else. Where don't I hurt? I crashed my motorcycle and slid on the pavement. Leather's helped, but it still hurts. Still hurts like hell. The guy I was fighting got a couple good shots in. Punches, I mean, not liquor. Hit me in the head 2 or 3 times. I saw double after that. He kept trying to rabbit punch me, in the kidneys. He had to lean in to aim there, so I got a good shot with my knee into his head. I can't believe he thought I knocked my bike into his. That would scratch my bike too. Jerk wouldn't believe me, just like Rachel wouldn't believe me that I wasn't at fault. I wasn't fired because of my drinking. I was fired because of the economy. He tried to rabbit punch me, in the kidneys. So, could also have kidney injury, but he hit me in the head 2 or 3 times and he saw double, and then he fell down and couldn't get up. So I am a little concerned still about the possibility of a head injury. So I guess the things we're still concerned about is that One thing to worry about is that the ulcer is camouflaging injury to kidney or something, right? Like we found a kidney ulcer, but I mean, we found an upper gastro ulcer, which we've treated, but that could be covering up an injury that he just had, like to his kidney. And then the other might be the possibility of a head injury. This is probably worth thinking about in terms of a general danger. Like probably one of the bigger dangers, medical dangers, is that one injury camouflages another. So what should we do? This Spamanite was saying he thinks we should do a CT scan of the head and a CT scan of abdomen. Those aren't bad ideas. All right, well, we have to do one first. What's it going to be? We've only got one more action to take before the next time clock. Abdomen or head? I mean, he's not saying he's got a headache. I would think he'd have signs of a headache first, and he's talking fine. He's not slurring his words anymore. I think we should do a CT scan of abdomen. I don't think it's likely he has a head injury, concussion. He's not slurring. He doesn't have headache. I'm more concerned that the ulcer is hiding damage to kidney or other internal injuries. So I say we do a CT scan of the abdomen. All right. CT scan of abdomen. It's in the 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. period, so ESS. Let's at least rule out that there's something else happening. ESS. C ZLW. ZLW says, typically an abdominal CT scan uses an oral contrast dye to get a better scan. Do you want to give Pete an oral contrast dye before the scan? That's rough. That's a little scary. I mean, we knew it was an oral contrast dye, but is the ulcer going to freak out? This feels a little unfair. It feels like as a doctor, we would know if the contrast dye is going to interact with the ulcer, whereas there's no indications on any of our documents. Not caused by stress or spicy food. I think we give him the dye. We have no sign that the dye will have a bad effect. And I would blame the specialist. We're going to tell the specialist he's got an ulcer. So don't do it if it's going to upset the ulcer. Then we can blame this person. Okay, so we are going to give him the contrast dye. We're going to give him an oral contrast dye before the scan, EFA. If it says he has an ulcer reaction, I think that's a little unfair. But let's see. EFA, story card 27. Let me just write down. It's either EFA 27 or TBZ, which is 26. So I'm going to look at 27. If it says the ulcer has a bad reaction, I'm going to call foul on that because we know he's got an ulcer and we wouldn't have given it to him if there was any chance of it. So let's just see. The gastroenterologist examines the abdominal CT scan, which is made up of several images or slices. He points to one of the images. You used contrast dye, didn't you? The detail is really good. Look here near the spleen. Oh, that's not good. He examines the image closely. Your patient has a ruptured spleen. Without immediate surgery, the internal bleeding could be life-threatening. Look at that. Now, how cool is that? We specifically said that the endoscopy could be fooling us into thinking that that's the cause of the bleeding. So we focused our efforts on doubling our check for it, and we have now found a hidden thing, and we specifically worried about the contrast dye, but decided we have no evidence that it's counterindicated by an ulcer, so we're going to give it to him. We did, and it helped us pinpoint it. Take story card. Well, he might get sick now from it, from the contrast dye, but let's see. Story card 25. Oh boy. Okay, here we go. Emergency splenectomy. The surgeon for the splenectomy has just come on shift and knows nothing about Pete's condition. He asked, is there anything I should know about your patient before I remove his spleen? Start a timer. You have 2 minutes to write down everything you want to share with the surgeon before surgery begins. How cool is that? Okay. So you have 2 minutes, which we convert to 6 minutes. So someone write down the time. Okay. 42:31. So we're really making it 6 minutes so we can talk about it. But we're going to say he has an ulcer, right? He's got high alcohol. So avoid most pain killers. Ulcer, avoid naproxen if possible. I mean, we have given him the antacid, so it wouldn't be the worst thing if he had to. Anything else we have to tell him to worry about? Allergic to latex, thank you. To latex, thank you for remembering that. That's a great point. How cool is this that he's like, he doesn't have time to check his records. Okay. Anything else? The medication we already used on him, yeah, give him the wound on his arm. Yeah, I guess he's going to see that. I guess we'll say the wound is not sutured yet. This is the main one, though. The main one we're giving him is about the sedatives that he has to avoid because of the high alcohol. We haven't done a drug test, so maybe we're going to just remind him here that we haven't tested for cocaine, etc. So keep that in mind. All right, we're going to stop there. I think that's good enough. Story card 14. Here we go. Clear our workspace for the surgery. Okay, so it's an emergency splenectomy. I've taken story card 14. Where's the spleen? Right there. Can you see it? Right there. That's why he was holding his left side. Remember, he was holding his left side? That should have been a clue to us that maybe it might have been spleen. Okay, here we go. All right, take all the cards that apply. If you don't share about his high blood alcohol, take 28. Okay, we did share, so we have to. If you don't share about his allergy to latex, take 29. Good work in the channel for remembering that. If you did not share about Pete's loss of blood from his arm injury, I guess we didn't share about loss of blood, but we gave him a transfusion. We did tell him about the arm injury. We did tell him about the arm injury. Although I didn't write it down in all fairness. I said the wound is not sutured yet. So we did tell him about the arm. But this seems to be about specifically about lack of blood loss. All right, I'm going to take this card, but we gave him a transfusion, so we should have replaced that blood. So we'll see if that takes that into account or not. 30, and then after we've read all these other cards, 35. Okay, I'm going to read 30, but I'm going to take it, I'm going to house rule it if it looks like it's not considering it. Surge is moving along a brisk pace. When his heart rate begins to increase and becomes irregular, his blood pressure plummets. The teen shifts its focus to just keeping him alive. This looks like it's just going to penalize us at some point. I don't believe it. This is not right. I don't think this should apply to us. Okay, but let's read 35. And nothing else happens. This is just something that's going to be like at the end of the game. So I think this is just a miss that it didn't consider the transfusion, or maybe it'll account for it at the end, but nothing else happens. So we just put this aside. Okay, let's let them do the rest of the thing. Okay. Alcohol disrupts the absorption of anesthesia. Failure to disclose that he has high blood alcohol would result in giving him too much anesthesia. Failure to tell about the latex allergy means the latex glove the team would use could send him into anaphylactic reaction. He has already lost quite a bit of blood. Additional blood loss during this surgery could put him into hypovolemic shock. Okay, so it said count the number of these. So for each one of these, you would get an exclamation point. But we are not going to count this because, one, we told him about the wound, but more importantly, we gave him we gave him a transfusion. And the fact that we mentioned the arm wound that hadn't been sutured and we gave him transfusion means I'm not going to count this. But I do think for the designers, this is a little bit of a bug. I think the transfusion logic would tell you would replace the lost blood. So we're going to say that we have 0. So we're going to take card 31. 031. Okay. We can look at what 32 would have done. Ugh, look how scary this looks. The operation is a success. In addition, Pete is one of the 30% of people who have a second spleen. While usually very small, a so-called accessory spleen can grow and function after the main spleen is removed. Pete is a lucky guy. Okay, that's insanity, and this is scary looking. If you have status card 2, which we don't, take 3. Otherwise, take story card 36, because we have 4. We're drunk and in pain. So otherwise, take story card 36. Okay. So here's Story card 36. Congratulations, Pete has survived the night. Take status card 5, drunk and remorseful. Pete seems to be sobering up somewhat as the seriousness of the night's events finally penetrate his drunken haze. My life is really falling apart, he says. He buries his face in his hands and cries. Then he pulls himself together. Thanks, Doc. You've given me a second chance. I'll do better. I don't know how, but I'm going to figure it out. You can keep working with Pete until you're ready to complete your final report. When you've completed your final report, read the epilogue. So we're getting the final status card, which is now drunk and remorseful. So I think everyone should pat themselves on the back. We're not quite done yet. We can stick around. We've learned our lesson to be really careful. But I think we learned our lessons from yesterday, and we were more focused on double checking. This was a very cool moment that we pulled it off right at the end of 3 a.m. Right before the 4 a.m. update, we had this emergency CT scan that triggered all this emergency splenectomy. And boy, this was some good teamwork here. Really good remembering the latex allergy, because I would have forgotten that. Pretty exciting. And we are told he survived the night. So no surprises, we survived the night. Although our other patients survived the night too. And then bad things happened. So maybe we should... I mean, he's recovering now in surgery. What should we do? We could ask him some more questions. We could ask him about Rachel. We could ask him if he took any other drugs. We could do a drug panel. I mean, he did get into an accident, but I don't think, like, the police might want his blood alcohol for later, but it's not going to help because he drank after he got to the bar. Oh, we can suture his arm. Let's do this arm suture, but yes, let's do the 4 a.m. update, I guess. You can keep working with him. I guess we have to do a 4 a.m. update. I wonder if the game knows we've brought him through to the end of the night, though. That's kind of weird. Okay, let's do this. Oh, he's remorseful. We've solved it. It knows we've solved it. Okay, let's do this EVB. And then let's suture up his arm. Why not, right? Maybe something bad's gonna happen. We could, but the game is letting us end the night if we want to, so it seems unlikely. EVB. Pete's looking much better than when he first came in, although he's still clearly drunk. Can I leave yet? He says. I gotta find my motorcycle and ride home. Nope, it's not time to release him. So maybe this is good we didn't release him because he's clearly still drunk. Okay, so now let's suture up his arm while he's under anesthetic and recovering. He won't even realize it. So I say we suture the arm. Might as well go above and beyond. Maybe we will get some stock tips from this guy. Although he's been fired, so I don't know if he's really going to be in such shape for that. HWT, story card 22. Oh, yeah, look at that. It's not that bad, says Pete, looking at the laceration on his arm. The guy I watched fighting grabbed a beer bottle and smashed it on a table, caught me in the arm, for I choked him good. Sent him flying over the bar. Pete chuckles at the memory. Ouch, he says as you poke him with your needle. Pete fidgets restlessly while you use your needle to suture the laceration on his arm, but he holds still long enough for you to make 30 stitches, each about 2 centimeters apart. You then dress the wound to make sure it stays completely closed. Okay, yeah, that's pretty serious. All right. Well, we know we're not going to give him any of these. He's not in severe pain, and they all might interfere with his ulcer or his ulcer or alcohol. There's no more specialists we need to see. We don't need to do a crash cart. It's not an emergency. We've already given him a blood transfusion. We could do a head CT scan. I'll tell you what I think we should do. I don't think the blood alcohol is going to help us because he was drinking after the accident. However, if it turns out he got into an accident and killed someone, having a drug panel that showed he was on other drugs, other illegal drugs, would help prosecute him. That's because he seems fine. It feels to me like he was in an accident driving, although he's on a motorcycle. It's unlikely you would kill someone else on a motorcycle, more like hurt yourself. So probably drug panel's not useful. I'll tell you what we do though. Let's ask him these extra questions about Rachel. Like maybe he's going to be like, "Oh yeah, Rachel, I killed her." Like maybe we should ask him. I'm going to ask him about Rachel now that he's calm. And maybe question 2, maybe he'll admit he didn't have any other drugs. We aren't going to get Employee of the Month unless we run up the insurance tab. All right, let's just ask him about Rachel, just to fill in the story when we go tell our friends about this story. Card 20. Here's Pete Johnson. Rachel is my wife, soon to be ex. I don't know what happened. Everything was going perfect. Job was great. Money was rolling in. And then all of a sudden, she says she feels claustrophobic. Can you believe that? Like I was crowding her or something. I gave her everything she wanted, but apparently that wasn't enough, so she left. She took the kids and my life collapsed. I guess that's just led to him drinking. And then ZNW, this is what else did you take? Anything else? Let's see if he admits to taking anything else. Otherwise, I think he's good to go. ZNW is story card 6. Although, you know, this is how we got into trouble. Maybe we need to do a head CT scan before you let him go. I didn't know how much I drank. Wait, are you a cop? If you're a cop, I didn't drink anything before I got on my bike. Scout's honor across my heart. Look, it's been hard the last 6 months since Rachel left me. I hate going back to that crappy little apartment by myself, so I hang out at the bars. What? Oh yeah, how much did I drink? Well, 5 or 6 whiskeys. Wait, did you say you're a cop? I mean, 2 or 3. Regulars, not doubles. Did I take anything else, like drugs? No, I haven't touched cocaine for a couple years, not since little Ruby was born. I used to smoke cigars, but who can afford those now that Rachel is, Hey, do you have any liquor around here? You know, something to take off the edge? I'm in a lot of pain. I'd even settle for a beer right now. All right, well, he's a little bit admitted about information. That would be useful if he got into, if the cops need information for us. Feels like he's telling the truth about the other drugs. Now, I think our last action should be to do a head CT scan. Let's make sure he doesn't have a concussion and brain bleeding. Yeah. So it's 5 a.m. We're doing a head scan just to be sure. NVB. Any reason we shouldn't? No, he's not allergic to the contrast dye. In fact, he's already got the contrast dye in his system. NVB, the scan shows nothing out of the ordinary. Okay, so I think we're all set. It's 6 a.m. Let's read the 6 a.m. update. 6 a.m. update is LDL? LOL or LDL? Feels like we've got this one in hand. So is it an LOL or LDL? What does that say? LDL. Why is it not? Why is this camera no longer zooming in? Is it toggled off? Yes. That's my plugin. LDL. LDL says CEVB. EVB says Pete's looking much better than when he first came in, although he's clearly still drunk. Can I leave yet? I gotta find my motorcycle and ride home. Nope, it's not time to release him. So I don't know if this means like we're done, but I guess we're gonna wait and hold him till 8. So let's just make sure we hold him till 8 and then read this. QGU. QGU. Pete's looking much better than when he first came in, although he's clearly still drunk. Can I leave yet? He says, I gotta find my motorcycle and ride home. Nope, Pete's definitely not ready to be released. CZAL. What's that about? Kind of weird, huh? Your shift is over. If you want, you can take overtime. Otherwise, it's time to complete. Okay, so that didn't have any effect. Okay. Well, I feel very good about tonight's shift. Let's take a break. Our last break. We'll come back. We'll read the epilogue, and then we'll discuss the case. So I want to hear your thoughts about the game, about the case, and the whole set of 3. If you've joined me for all... Sorry, the whole set of 4 cases if you've joined me for all. So we'll take an 8-minute break. We'll come back. We'll read the epilogue. Then we'll discuss this case and the game as a whole. I'll see you in 8 minutes. We're back here watching Co-op for 2. YouTube says 14 concurrent viewers and 6 likes. We're here all celebrating. Joran in the chat, part of the development team, says something very funny. He says, nice fact. During our target group testing, doctors were actually performing the worst out of all test groups. They barely spoke with the patients and did not listen to Nurse Judy. That seems completely realistic. All right, so let me... we're ready to solve it. We actually were just hanging out with him, waiting, checking on him at 6 to see if it was time for him to go. We waited till 8. It was time for him to go. And we talked to him a bit. We asked him, he seems like he's doing fine. He's drunk, still drunk, but remorseful. I'm ready to send him out the door. Yesterday's case is making me feel a little bit like Columbo. And like, as we're getting ready to leave on our shift and go home, I feel like we got to say, tell you what, go in for a chest x-ray. Just humor me. Doesn't seem like you got any problems. But let's just make sure he doesn't have any broken ribs. I mean, is that worth doing while we've got him here? Yeah, let's send him for a chest x-ray just to make sure. He's so drunk, he may not even realize and feel any pain in his chest. So it's 6 a.m. We're going to do chest x-ray PNC. Just because we're paranoid now. I mean, the bill this guy's going to get is going to make him want to commit suicide, but PNC, story card 16. It is maybe worth noting that if you've got someone very drunk, they may not be properly reporting pain, especially if most of his pain is spleen and ulcer, and now he's been under anesthesia. He may not even be able to report pain properly. So let's just check out his chest x-ray. The radiologist says, your patient must have been in a heck of a fight. Bruise in his upper chest is just that, a bruise. But the 8th rib on his left side near his abdomen is broken. He's probably in incredible pain. Rib will heal on its own in about 6 weeks. We won't prescribe compression wraps anymore because they restrict breathing. There's nothing more you need to do other than advise your patient to take it easy and maybe give him something for his pain, but we're not going to give him something for his pain. All of the pain medications cause problems with either the ulcer or the allergy. Okay, so in fact, he did get into a serious fight and broke a rib. And he's so drunk he didn't even realize it. But it's going to heal on its own. All right. Well, it's good that we did that. That was a chest x-ray. All right. Well, now we're on a roll here. Anything else we need to do? I don't see how a drug panel helps us. Blood test. I mean, I guess we could see that he's got some other issue. You want to do a blood test just so we learn a little bit? This is what the intern does. Run some extra tests. The guy's got money, although he doesn't really have any money. But we'll learn a little bit more about blood tests. So should we run a blood test? Let's run a blood test on him. CBC. NSQ. This is what happens when you almost mess up and get sued. Blood tests are normal. patient's fluid and blood volumes are also almost back to normal levels. Okay. So he's fine. Blood CBC. Okay, anything that the audience wants to do before we let him out of here? I believe him that he's not doing drugs. We've done a head scan. We did that. We did the head scan or we didn't? Yes, we did. We did the head scan. Yes, we did the head scan and it was fine. Okay, we're all done here. We're going to save our last turn and go home early. He doesn't need IV fluids. He's fine. Okay, here we go. Epilogue time. I mean, I don't know what more he wants from us. He got a new spleen. Here we go. Considering Pete crashed his motorcycle, got in a bar fight, and was thrown through a window, there's the potential for a lot of trouble. He's also so drunk he won't answer questions or let you examine him. You could sedate Pete so he's easier to work with, but given how poorly alcohol and sedatives interact, you'd need a crash cart to keep him alive. Pete's arm is an open wound, so it's a priority. He won't let you suture it before 2 a.m., but you can dress it to give yourself a few extra hours before it becomes infected. This is exactly what we reasoned about. We said suturing might be he's too uncooperative, so we did it exactly right. We dressed it to buy ourselves some time, and then we sutured it later. He also lost a lot of blood, so a blood transfusion or IV fluids will prevent an emergency at 4. It didn't feel like we got a card that asked us about a blood transfusion, but maybe that's because by 4 we had already solved other problems. At 2 a.m., Pete vomits blood. The gastroenterologist can help identify this as internal bleeding and suggest an endoscopy to determine if it's a stomach issue. So he would have suggested we do what we already did. Stomach issue, which it is. Pete has a Helicobacter pylori, which aggravated by Pete's excessive drinking since his wife left him, has led to an ulcer. A heater probe during endoscopy would be able to stop the bleeding. You should prescribe at least 2 antibiotics and something to reduce stomach acid. That's exactly what we did. Once Pete has thrown up, he's more cooperative. It's worth performing a physical exam to see if there are symptoms you haven't identified yet. If you do, so we did a physical exam earlier and we didn't get all, oh yes, we did. You discover soreness in his chest and abdomen. No, I guess we did it so early that he wasn't really useful to us because I don't think he mentioned the chest problem. X-ray reveals a broken rib. Right, okay. We got that from a CT scan because we didn't do the X-ray. A broken rib, there's not much you can do about this other than provide pain medication and advise him to take it easy. Unfortunately, painkillers and alcohol don't mix together. Even if you chose naproxen, remember that's what we were going to give him originally, it says there's Pete's ulcer to consider. Pete's safest bet is to tough it out until he's sober, which will be a while yet. Okay, so we got that exactly right. Pete's case is an example of how conditions can mask each other. Isn't this exactly what I said about camouflaging? Oh, people are saying we missed something. Okay, let's see. Certainly the laceration, broken rib, and ulcer can account for Pete's level of pain. However, he was in both a motorcycle accident and a fist fight, either of which could have caused internal injury, and they have. When Pete crashed his motorcycle, he landed hard enough to rupture his spleen. Pete needs an emergency splenectomy. You would need to advise the surgeon who has just come on shift about possible complications, high blood alcohol, blood loss, allergy to latex. With this information, the surgery is a success. Pete's depression over his broken marriage led him to make the choices that brought him to your emergency room tonight. Healing his body, but not his spirit, may end with him in the morgue next time. Pete needs professional help to face his troubles and deal with them. There's one last complication. If you sutured his arm, he told you that the man he was fighting with cut his arm with a broken beer bottle. According to New York law, you must report a wound from a sharp object to law enforcement. If you do not, it's a Class A misdemeanor and you risk a year in prison. In addition to the human body, doctors must know the law as well. We even read all the legal stuff. Where is that legal? We even read this. We should have read it more carefully. Any person tending to a patient with a gunshot, bullet, knife, we read this, or sharp object or powder burn is required to report the injury to law enforcement unless the patient is a member of the armed forces. All right. Well, this is the look. This is not real. No doctor is going to jail for not reporting a knife wound. Also, a glass wound. Also, it's his word against ours. And he's drunk. And if you think the doctor's above lying about something like this, I got news for you. They're just like everyone else. They're not above lying if it will save them from jail. But anyway, I mean, this is fair. We're going to take the penalty in points for not doing this. I'm just saying, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. No doctor's going to jail for not reporting that. All right, let's look at our score here. 40 points. Maybe we'll do it. Okay, we'll do it here. Okay. Oh, we didn't fill this out. Okay, but we got all this right. We said broken rib. We were supposed to fill this out first, but spleen and then ulcer. Then we gave him the treatments. We did a splenectomy. And then we sutured. And then lacerated arm was his other thing. Okay, suture recommendations. I suppose we should have recommended that he see a psychologist, but I wasn't going to recommend that. I'm just going to tell him to take it easy with the rib, and then no spicy foods, which could exacerbate the ulcer, no alcohol for the ulcer. Okay, and we weren't going to report it, and we weren't going to send it to a psychologist. Okay, so let's do our score here. 40 points if you survived the night. Okay, that's our 40. 5 points if we did a physical examination, which we did. 5 points if we give him a transfusion, which we did very early on. 5 points, -5 if you didn't dress or suture before 6. Okay, well, we did, so we don't lose that. -10 if you tried to sedate him. We didn't do that. Plus 10 points if the endoscopy is successful. Was it possible to have a failed endoscopy? Maybe if we had tried to give him sedation, it would have failed. 5 if you prescribed metronidazole and clarithromycin. We did. There they are. There, right there. That's another 5. 5 points if you prescribed pantoprazole, which we did. It's right there for the acid. That's another +5. -5 if you did any other drugs. We didn't. +5 if you discover his rib and advise him to take it easy, which we did. Another 5. -5 if you prescribed naproxen. We almost did. -10 if you prescribed Vicodin. -5 if you tried to give him acetaminophen. +10 if you identified all 3 complications, which we let's see. +10 if you identified all 3 complications. Well, I'm going to give us that +10 because we gave him a transfusion, which took care of the blood loss. So, unless we're not thinking about blood transfusion properly, maybe blood transfusion always takes the same amount of blood out as it puts in. But I guess we told him about the laceration, so I'm going to give it to us. Okay, +5 if you recommended therapy. We didn't. That's a fun idea. So I'm not going to give us that bonus. +10 if you sutured the arm. We did that. That's fun. You don't have to suture it. You could have just dressed it and get him through the night, but we did. So we get that bonus. -5 if we forgot to notify the police. So we are going to take that -5. That's too bad. Look at this. -5 if you told the police his blood alcohol content, because we're not allowed to for privacy. That we did remember. We did read that part about how we shouldn't be doing it, telling the police of it on our own. -5 for every overtime. I guess we're not counting any against that. Okay, so 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 85, 95, -5 is 90. This is just, okay, let's talk about the game. I'd like to hear the thoughts for any of you who played along with us here. Let's talk about this case in particular first. I mean, this was a very satisfying case. We had a real aha moment when we thought of on our own that the ulcer could be hiding a more severe problem, and it was a acute problem that was going to send him into shock if we didn't treat it. That was a great moment. And it did feel like we were very focused on this case. We understood that him being drunk was going to make certain things harder to ascertain. We did things in the right order so that we didn't try to ask him questions when he wasn't going to respond. We were on our toes about the pain medications. So we were on the right track. That was very fun. But I also love how in each of the cases they've done this. The last two cases had this real-time element that worked a little differently in both of these cases. In this one, it was like the emergency doctor arrived and he was like, I don't have time to go through the thing. Tell me quickly what I need to know. That was very cool. And we needed a group effort to remember all the things. I guess MVP goes to the person, whoever it was, that remembered about the latex. And then we did a last-minute chest x-ray, which discovered something else, which we got some extra points with. I think this is pure brilliance, that there are all these little mini ways to tweak the points, and how some of them are very straightforward mechanically, like you're just looking for conflicts, what drugs are contraindicated, but then some of them are just very little subtle and clever things. Like we didn't, if you decide to report something to the police, if you fail to report to the police, this part about, did you suggest that he goes to therapy? Those are these little things that, like, if you go above and beyond, if you role play this game and treat it as a very serious thing, like if I was a doctor, what are all the things I would say? And this open-endedness about these recommendations, it does say, actually, future tests, lifestyle changes, like it's so open-ended, and then to have the points reward you for that, that's just very clever. It's exactly what you want in this kind of game. It's really just very lovingly, subtly detailed stuff where it's a mix of this, and this is what you want with the score. Like, it would be very hard to get a perfect score here because some of these things are very subtle, and you're going to be a very rare group to get these bonuses perfect. Recommending that he joins a therapy and report to the police the knife wound. But that's exactly what you want. Like, we got almost everything, but just these tiny little details. So this was a brilliant case, and I think there There's a lot of things that this game as a system does really well, and I can't wait to play the next set of cases. I think, the easy cases were entertaining, but it was these last two cases that were really deeply enjoyable. Dispaminite says, this was a great box. I would highly recommend it to anyone who plays mysteries. I enjoyed all 4 cases. My recommendation is the card list does give hints. It might be worth putting codes with each item in the book, and then each case has its own book, which gives results for the specific case. So what Dispaminite is saying, I'm not sure if it's clear, but all Dispaminite is saying is something we observed before, which is that this limited list, and this is a brilliant system, how the conditions change the codes and the options. This is wonderful, except that it feels like it's leaking substantial information. Like, for example, when the status card came out with an upper endoscopy, like that's a huge hint to do the upper endoscopy. Now, it doesn't break anything, but it would make the game play on a harder level if you didn't have access to this. And I think, although this system works, I wonder if it might make sense to do it slightly differently, or at least have an option. So I do have we have a couple suggestions we wrote out as we played. That might be a little tricky to do, but something for the authors to consider. Not listing these choices. I'm not sure exactly how you'd have to do it. You would just have maybe the book you'd look up, or give each test its own code. Like an upper endoscopy is always UE, and then you'd look up UE for status card 2 on this case, and it would tell you what to read. But just something to consider. It doesn't break things, but it does leak information. DJ Moneycut says, I've been harping on the lack of a point scale. Without it, our scale doesn't tell us how we did. I don't understand that complaint. We've got the totality, we know, and all of the scores seem like they total about 100. So it's 100 plus or minus a little bit. So we know how we did. We got a 90 out of 100. I guess what DJ Moneycut is one of those common things that say if you got between 0 and 50, not so great. If you got between 80 and 100, then you're promoted. I guess you want something like that. I mean, it's fine. It wouldn't hurt at all. It seemed pretty obvious to me that we knew when we did great or when we did terrible. What does 55 out of 100 mean? Well, I mean, it's like, it's a D. It's a failure. Isara says, this was an extremely enjoyable and certainly will be a most memorable game. Time factor countdown mechanic was amazing. Yeah, I love those moments that were those real-time moments. The other thing that I thought was so well done here is that you really feel like you're dealing with patients, right? It's not like here's the setup and then you try to cure them. You're interacting with them over the course of the night. You're talking with them. You're getting updates on them. We're seeing little pictures of them as their status changes. And that means by the time you get to the end of this, you've put a person to this case. It's not just it's not just an academic exercise. It feels like there's a real person that you're worried about treating. And I feel like we were all invested. We're invested in helping these people. We were also invested in our career in terms of repercussions if we messed up another case after yesterday. Now, this thing says we could be in legal jeopardy for not reporting that. But You got to trust me. We're not in any legal jeopardy. Asara says, the case with the husband and wife, although easy, their dialogue felt real. Yeah, that was fun. That's true. That case was pretty good, too. I got to admit, even though that was that was one of the medium ones, though, right? Wasn't it? Yeah, that was our medium one. Perry says, patients seemed like real people. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And I appreciate the sort of adultness of these cases. I appreciated the art on all this stuff. And it really seemed to reward being thoughtful. And you know what another thing is to say about this game? Like, the designers here were tricky. They were devious. They tried to trick us constantly. They deliberately did that endoscopy ulcer thing to throw us off the track. They deliberately asked us when we wanted to do the CT scan. Remember, we said, do the CT scan, and it said, normally we give a contrast dye. Do you want to give a contrast dye? And we were like, wait a second. We got to think about this. He's got an ulcer. Maybe we don't want to give him the contrast dye. But in the end, we decided, yes, we have no reason not to. We're going to give it to him. And that was the right decision. And the game tried to trick us there. It tried to make us think we shouldn't. And in that, the game was designed, makes you feel clever when you get things right. And look at all these cards we didn't see for this case. Every case was like this. There's a huge chunk of cards that you don't see. What was this state we never saw? Drunk and depressed, huh? And then all of these cases had situations where you could make your patient worse. And then not only could you make it worse, but it wasn't an instant death. It was make it worse and then figure out how to fix it, right? Really, really well done. Not just really well done box of cases, but unique. There are probably PC games that are similar to this, but I can't think of any mystery board analog game that comes anywhere close to this, is even in this genre. And this is just done so well, so successfully, completely analog, no use of internet, bug-free. The only thing I might complain about is that blood transfusion thing. And the variety of things that we get these forms. Just, boy, just firing on all cylinders. Really hard to find a flaw here. This case we played for 2.5 hours. I think the difficulty rankings were pretty good, although you could make the case that the last case was maybe harder than this one. But I guess if you had done an MRI on her, you would have gotten a little bit lucky. I don't know. Maybe I would put the last case and this case similar difficulty rather than have the last one be easier. The format is great. Maybe it might be nice if they added a couple extra of the forms in the box so you could pass it along at least once without using up all the forms. You could see as a system they could make multiple expansions that added more of these documents to it. We got these 5. We got 5, but you could imagine expansions which had more. All right, well, I'll have to do a review of this soon, but a real pleasure to play it. I think this is going to make a gift. This is going to be a mystery game that's going to appeal to a whole class of people who wouldn't normally play the crime mysteries that we play. I think my nieces are going to love this. I'm going to bring this for them to play next time I see them. I think it would make a good gift. Any final thoughts from anyone else before we wrap up? I guess I should say it was a real pleasure to play with this group. Feels like a little bit of a different group than normally play with me for my crime mysteries. But couldn't ask for a better group here. We did good. We did well. Jaron says, game plays also different with two or three players. You get many discussions and sometimes a bit of frustration. So you want to give him this drug and etc. Yeah, some disagreements. I can see that. I can see that. Well, because of this strict timetable and things getting worse, everything does feel very weighty, like the decisions matter. Okay, I do hope that the authors of this game write up something about the design of it. It kind of feels like this was designed by medical professionals, maybe as a teaching aid. I mean, it really feels like it's got that flavor that you not only is it entertaining as a game, but would be useful. It was interesting to hear that the game was tested by doctors who didn't listen to the patients. It makes complete sense. Okay, a pleasure. I'll see you tomorrow afternoon, which is really tonight, in 11, 12, 13 hours for Dear Homes. I'll try to get some sleep in the meantime. See you guys next time.